a fascinating guy. He's done many things throughout his lifetime. He's been in real estate for many years, commercial real estate, I believe, church leadership, and it's connected with a lot of things throughout God's kingdom in many different ways. Like I said, he worked in commercial real estate for 18 years. Then he went into a call into full-time ministry after that. So for 9 years, he served as pastor at Church by the Sea, Laguna Beach. He began writing about the church around the world in 1999. His stories have appeared in Assist News, The Christian Post, Breaking Christian News, and World Magazine, among other Christian media. And on top of that, he runs a family farm in Temecula. So, anyhow. He also hosts a men's Bible study on Saturdays, Pines Park, right, or in that Capo Beach area where they live. He lives with, obviously, his lovely wife, Sally, who is a fantastic artist in her own right. They have 2 sons, Sam and Nathaniel, and from what I understand, they just welcomed their first granddaughter, who is Malia Grace, and it is my pleasure and honor to introduce Mr. Mark Ellis to you.
It's an honor and privilege to be able to share my testimony this morning. I consider it a love story because I met the Lord and I met my wife, Sally, in the same year when I was 29 years old. And some of you may have seen the movie When Harry Met Sally. Well, this is when a hairier version of Mark met a beautiful lady named Sally and God in the same year. So I grew up in a pretty all-American family, and some of you might know my sister Lisa Hartman, and my mother Mary Ellen is sitting right down here. She's turning 90 in October. So we went to church sporadically when I was growing up, up until junior high. I don't really remember going to church in high school. But when I was 17, a friend of mine invited me to hear a visiting evangelist at his church. And he was a powerful speaker, and I was struck, this man is telling the truth. And I was just struck by the truth, but I wasn't, when he gave the invitation, I knew I wasn't ready to make Jesus the Lord of my life. I wasn't ready to give him up control. So what was my spiritual condition at 17? Well, I was very selfish and self-centered. I worshiped that unholy trinity, me, myself, and I. And I can characterize, there were 3 hooks the devil had on me. I refer to them as the 3 P's: pot, parties, and playboys. So as a freshman, I started drinking, and then as a graduating senior, I got into smoking weed. If I wasn't out with my girlfriend my junior, senior year, we were always out looking for parties with my friends. And at 15, I had my own subscription to Playboy magazine. I had a stack of those in my room. So those were the things that were the devil had his hook in me. So when I graduated high school, my parents naively sent me to Berkeley. And they dropped me off at the train station, Union Station in downtown Los Angeles. The train started heading north, and when we reached San Jose, a woman got on the train who strongly resembled Alice B. Toklas. And she was moving from car to car with this big silver platter handing out brownies, okay? So I had 1 or 2, and so by the time I got off the train in Oakland, got in that big yellow taxi, got to the dorms, I was flying high as a kite. So I was pretty lost my freshman year. I did, and in that spiritual void, I got into Eastern mysticism. And Baba Ram Dass was my big deal. His book, Be Here Now, was my spiritual guide. So when I graduated from Berkeley, I considered that I was an educated fool because I did not know God, okay? So with my family, we moved down to Orange County right after graduation. That was the promised land in 1978. I got a job in commercial real estate and pretty much lived for myself. If you want to become really miserable, just live for yourself, okay? So I bought my first townhouse in the Gulf Shores. The broker who sold it to me was a guy named Shepard, and he said he wanted to invite me to this Christian singles group called Salt Company, meeting at Mariners Church. So I went to that more to meet girls, not to meet God, okay? And I was in that group 7 years, and the messages I heard just went in one ear and out the other. But toward the end of that, when I was 29, I went to one Bible study, and there was a young woman named Sally who happened to visit only one time. So I'm so glad I was there that night, that I showed up, because we met, we dated for 1 week, had a great time together, but then she took off on a trip to visit a friend in Guam, of all places. She says, I'll be back in a month. So a month goes by, I never hear anything. And it's getting to be around Christmas. I thought, I don't want her to forget me. And so I sent her a Christmas greeting on a cassette tape. Not all of you remember cassette tapes in this room. But I made this thing to try to be humorous. And I used to do impressions. So it's the star of It's a Wonderful Life, Jim Stewart, introducing various people and wishing Sally a Merry Christmas. So anyway, I sent her this tape, never heard a word. I thought, oh no, that really bombed. I took a risk on humor, and anyway, months went by and I forgot about Sally. But in that intervening time, I went to a Bible study, and a guy there named Dave said he just finished reading this book called Evidence That Demands a Verdict by Josh McDowell. And the name of that book just kind of stuck in my craw, and I thought, I got to get that book. Here I am, 29, going to this Christian group. I don't even really know what I believe. I kind of believe in God, but Jesus, I'm not too sure about him. This born-again stuff makes me nervous. And I got to figure this out. So I bought the book, and it was 2 chapters in that book that really hit me. One was about the reliability of the scripture. Could we trust the ancient manuscripts? And I felt, after reading that, the answer was yes. And then the chapter on the resurrection, because I reasoned that if Jesus really did rise bodily from the dead, that set him apart from Buddha and Muhammad and all these other Christian leaders. I finished that chapter, got down on my knees on my shag carpet, and I said the sinner's prayer at the end of the book, and my life changed dramatically. It was like one operating system was removed, a new operating system came in, suddenly had a love for the Bible, for Christian music I'd never listened to before, and for being with other Christians. So a couple months go by. And a friend of mine, a girl I knew from Berkeley, was coming down with some friends to Palm Springs. So I went out there to meet them for the weekend to see if I could get anything going romantically. I'm still in the hunt for a wife. And nothing went right this whole weekend. And finally I'm driving her to Palm Springs Airport, and we walk up to the terminal, and there's a guy standing on the curb that I knew from Newport Beach. I introduced the two of them. They hit it off famously. Turns out they're on the same flight. So I'm standing there waving to them with this hangdog, forlorn look on my face as they go off together. I get in my car. I'm driving home on the 91 freeway. It's dark. I'm depressed. And there's a lighted cross that was on the hill in Weir Canyon. And I thought, I'm a brand new Christian, and I hear these Christians talk about giving your problems over to God. So I said, okay, God, I've completely failed finding a wife. you take over, you find me a wife. 45 minutes later, I get into my place in the Gulf Shores. I hit the answering machine, and there's Sally's voice saying, I've come back from Asia, would love to get together. So a year later, we were married. And then a year or two later, we had a little bambino that came into the picture. But why did Sally call after all those months? Well, she played the cassette tape for her mother. And her mother said, well, who is this guy? And so I said, oh, just some guy I met. And she said, well, do you ever thank him for the tape? And so I said, no. And her mother, this very genteel woman, did something very uncharacteristic. She slammed the table with her fist. She says, now you're looking for the wrong thing in a man. I want you to call him and thank him. So my marriage, not only thankful to the Lord, but my mother-in-law. I owed her a debt of gratitude. But between Sally and the Lord, it's been a long-term project, and slowly being transformed over all these years. But if you're like me, who you've heard the word, you kind of believe something about Jesus, but you never really made him the Lord of your life, I would like to talk more to you about that. So thank you for listening.
Yes.